Los Angeles is an incredibly mobile city. I mean, people are moving out, neighborhoods are changing, stuff comes down and goes back up. Buildings have an incredibly short lifespan here. The 1950s were the most important single growth spurt we've ever experienced, and the buildings and pieces, monuments of that era are incredibly important to the story of the West Coast. Crazy roofs and exploding light fixtures and colors and brightness and excitement all came together at that time and in this place. The car culture spread like wildfire in Los Angeles, and everything was adapted to the car. Businesses had to compete for the attention of the motorist, and the signs would get larger and larger and more animated and kinetic and wild and colorful. Giant objects were everywhere, mascots were everywhere. It became a very cluttered, exciting place. Pan's is probably the best remaining example of the exuberant, wild 50s coffee shop. It was designed in 1958 by Armé and Davis, who brought this all over the country. They did a lot of the other great landmark coffee shops. Pan's features the giant animated kinetic neon sign, the wild roof line, the exotic plants from nowhere on earth, and the flagstone walls, a combination of natural materials like the flagstone and glass and formica. For a number of years I've been involved with a group called the LA Conservancy. It's a nonprofit preservation group that is focused on the entire city and on every style. We meet once a month and we discuss strategies on saving buildings. A lot of us consider ourselves urban archaeologists in trying to peel back the layers and discover what's left here. The Driftwood Drive in Derry was built in 1960, and it is, again, the height of the car culture. It's a drive in Derry. You drive through this gigantic, colorful arch, and these clerks come out and attack your car, and they'll bring you milk and ice cream, whatever you need. You don't have to ever leave your car. The 1949 Bob's Big Boy restaurant in Burbank, California was about to be torn down 3 years ago for a high-rise office building, and we garnered local support for it, and now it's the #1 performer in the chain. It's doing well. It's doing great. And there's car hop service, and people that have been coming there for 40 years are back, and everybody's very happy and loves being there. This little menu is from a Bob's Big Boy restaurant. You know, it's just a menu, and it's an interesting artifact. But besides showing us what the original corporate mascot was, it's also a map, and it shows me where the original locations of this restaurant were. So now I can go to these addresses and try to find them. They're sort of like treasure maps. I have a personal attachment to all of this because my family moved out to Los Angeles in 1955, and through the family in the back, came out on Highway 66, moved into one of the new neighborhoods and one of the new communities, and ate at the hamburger stand and went to the drive-in theater and drove their big Buick around, and it's sort of my own history. The Covina Bowl was built in 1955 at the peak of the bowling boom, of the suburban boom of the 50s. It's an enormous structure. You could live a whole life in it. It's a city, and it just shows the excess to which this was carried. I love being an urban archaeologist because I have something to do while I'm driving, and it's great excitement to find something that's still there or that's hidden behind something. The Chemisphere House sort of embodies the 50s futurism in a way unlike any other place. Although it is a private residence and not a coffee shop that anybody can go to, the Chemisphere House in the Hollywood Hills was built on a site that's almost completely vertical, and the only solution was to put a simple concrete stalk and build the house on top of that. So it really wasn't meant to be a flying saucer on a stick, but it ended up looking that way. It was built in 1960 by John Lautner, who incidentally had built the Googie's coffee shop, which sort of lent its name to a whole generation of buildings and signs and cars. When I go into a structure like the Chemisphere 35 years after it was built, I can still experience what it must have been like to live in such an optimistic, era. I sort of live this lifestyle all the time. I wear my grandfather's watch. I wear 30-year-old clothing when I can get it. I'm just ridiculously obsessed with this period, and I want to figure out why it happened and exactly how it looked. As long as it's an underdog, as long as this stuff is not viewed as part of the mainstream, I think I'll definitely be fighting for it.